Welcome back, everybody. If you're new here, it's nice to meet you. Today, I'm going to be talking about another Haruki Murakami novel, this time After Dark. The very first video on this channel where I spoke about a book was the same author's Norwegian Wood. And since then, I got to read the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, and now this novel. I'm excited to jump into it. Haruki Murakami's After Dark is one of his most compact novels. Set over the course of a single night in Tokyo, it shifts seamlessly between surrealist motifs and realism. As the reader, you find yourself pulled back and forth between the realistic details of a night in Tokyo and these surrealist details that come out and kind of filter between the cracks of reality. And Murakami does one of the things that he's most proficient in. Murakami builds the story with cinematic detachment, this camera eye narrator, the drifting vignettes, and a deliberate refusal, in a sense, to tie everything back together. The result is a novel that operates more like a cross-section of the city at night rather than a conventional plot with a consistent through line. And so for many readers, that structure brings about a very natural question. Is the book pointing towards this unified metaphysical meaning, or is it intentionally refusing to tie up all of its loose ends? The script really explores the book's narrative through this lens of liminality. You have these various characters that are suspended between different states of their identity, and examines how Mari, Eri, and Takahashi embody different forms of endurance, withdrawal, and transition. The entire novel exists in this threshold space. Murakami positions the story between day and night, consciousness and dream, surrealism and realism. And the narrative voice that takes us through the story just reinforces this sense of liminality. You end up being framed as just this observer that's just positioned right over the city, looking down, only watching what's taking place, not interacting directly with it. You drift from one space to another, never able to fully interact with the scene. And so the city just becomes this sort of unconscious system, always active, barely knowable in any real deep sense of the meaning, and yet it's forming and influencing all of the lives that are taking shape within it. And so within that environment, all of the characters that we observe are similarly suspended. They're never fully absent or present in their own lives. And over the course of this video, we'll talk about the three most prominent characters. Mari Asai spends the night awake in the city as she refuses to return home. She embodies for us this functional loneliness, alert, capable, but unanchored. Eri Asai spends the night asleep, and she pulls on this surrealist thread for us throughout the story. Her sleep is unnatural, and she's transported into this sterile, surrealist realm, this alternative dimension observed by this faceless man, unreachable by the narrative itself. And finally, Takahashi, a college student, a trombonist. He moves through the night seemingly assured of his own path, yet even he remains at this turning point in his life, uncertain of who he will become. Together, these three characters form this triptych of liminality: endurance, withdrawal, and adaptation. Mari for us serves as the novel's anchor to the real world. She navigates the city with clarity and self-awareness, but she carries with her this quiet isolation. Her decision to stay out all night, it's not just rebellious, it's avoidant, really. She's unwilling to return back home, where she feels this perpetual sense of being peripheral and second and other compared to her sister. And ironically, she's unwilling to even confront her own desire to have a richer connection with that same sister. So in a way, she functions completely in crisis throughout the novel, helping this victim of violence and offering stability to others. She continues to navigate these chaotic environments, but she herself is emotionally withdrawn. Mari continues to drift through life without fully engaging. The night for her becomes this provisional journey back towards the family orbit by morning. In many ways, you might agree that she remains the most accessible character to the reader, but she herself is not whole. She remains present, yes, but she lacks the courage to really embrace her identity and become the person that she feels she's meant to be. The book shows us throughout that Mari has all this potential. She's kind, she's intelligent, she has the potential to really be the person. You get this sense, this feeling that she wants to be. But in the end, she leaves you with this sense of ambiguous detachment. You're left wondering what it is, the deeper things that are really on her mind. How does she really feel? What are her real concerns? We have pieces of the puzzle that we're left to try to scramble and put back together. But in the end, it's like we never fully know. Like so many people in life, we get this sense that she's just continually enduring, but lacking the confidence or the courage to truly face her fears and take what she knows she wants, to really become who she knows she wants to be. Eddie's storyline is the novel's most perplexing, but it becomes more coherent when it's understood as a metaphor for profound psychological collapse. Earlier in her life, she was expressive and emotionally available. The book takes care to show us this nascent state of her emotional availability in the elevator scene with Mari, a moment marking the beginning of this perceptual rupture. As Eddie grew older, she became commodified through her modeling career. Her image continued to gain value while her subjectivity eroded. She was constantly looked at and, if you'll allow me to say, never truly seen. She was made to be a product. She lost agency. In the elevator, we saw how she was able to sublimate her own fear into being stronger, being the older sister, being there for Mari. And that tells us a couple things about Eddie. One, as a child, she did in fact have the capacity for a relationship with her sister. She is giving of herself and she cares about those that she loves. This confirms that she was not just born as this naturally withdrawn figure. Two, this shows us a sort of natural proclivity of hers, and that is to give of herself for the sake of those around her. This is clearly an endearing and often positive trait, but it gives us a bit of foreshadowing regarding her future. Her current state in the book, where we find her, is the state of depression. She exists in what really is described as a sort of catatonic state. Over the course of the night, she dissociates to this sort of sterile alternative dimension. The TV in her room, I believe, exists as a symbol of the culture that has such an emphasis on media. Media as this overbearing force of commercial interests. Despite being unplugged, it persists. Therefore, metaphorically, Eddie is incapable of separating. She cannot turn it off. The faceless man and the continual sense of surveillance show us that she has lost her sense of agency. She's lost it to these faceless corporations that utilize her as an advertising tool rather than a person, rather than a human being. And so she herself feels less like a person. She feels more like a product. She is separate. She is other. She eats sterile food and exists in this sterile realm devoid of connection. And so she retreats into this deep depression that we, the reader, find her in when we begin the book. But perhaps she can be saved by her sister, who refuses to let her go and who continues to endure. Takahashi appears to be the novel's stabilizing presence. He's articulate, he's socially functional, he moves quite effortlessly throughout the night, but even he's in this state of transition. He's abandoning music, which has been a key part of his personality, of who he is, and he is unsure of who he will become next. Yet he's walking away, not exactly sure where he's headed. We find him offering these long explanations to the other characters, and it almost seems like he's trying to persuade himself while talking to them rather than trying to just explain his already preformed point of view. It's like he lacks his own convictions, at least in any real sense. He represents this mobility rather than stability. Even his interest in Mari is more existential than it is romantic. She mirrors parts of himself for him that he's yet to fully articulate. This uncertainty and displacement and desire for real connection. He doesn't yet know how to fully pursue that in his own life. And so he finds himself drawn to her. He draws near to her as this source of orientation. For him, she's someone who may form this sort of bridge. She may be a bridge between who he was and who he has yet to become. She's this living link between his past and his future, you could say. And so Takahashi embodies this adaptation. Tentative, imperfect, but active. This is in contrast to Eddie's withdrawal and Marty's endurance. He is the one who is moving toward this future identity. And so After Dark ends without unifying its threads. And that lack of resolution is seemingly intentional. I kept expecting that everything would tie back together as I approached the end of the book, but as I turned the final page, I began to realize that that would not be the case. The novel itself is this cross-section of the various characters in these liminal states, none of whom, by the way, reach total coherence by dawn. Murakami, more than any other author, keeps me guessing throughout his books. It's very difficult for me to assume exactly what is going to happen next. He describes the scenes with just enough detail for your mind to fill in all of the blanks without impeding on the pacing of the story. And in the end, you're left putting all the pieces together. Mari re-enters her home, but remains emotionally tentative. Eddie never really fully returns to herself, and Takahashi, for his part, leaves with possibility rather than clarity. So therefore, Murakami's Night is really a place of potentiality. It's a place of potential rather than a place of final being. It's like this place of exposure rather than full revelation. We have these hidden structures beneath the surface: surveillance, dissociation, connection, loneliness, all briefly come into view. People move through life in different ways. Some endure it, some adapt, and some disappear within it. After Dark, the novel doesn't resolve all of its mysteries because the characters within the narrative lack that revelation themselves. They, as much as us, the reader, lack all of the answers. Instead, the book offers a portrait of the fragile details, the fragile thresholds that define this contemporary existence that we find ourselves in. A reminder that much of life takes place between who we've been and the potential of who we may become. I hope you've enjoyed this video as we've talked about Haruki Murakami's After Dark. I really enjoyed the book and I look forward to reading more of his novels in the future. If you wouldn't mind liking this video to let me know that you'd like to see more videos on his work. And otherwise, I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.